You know that feeling, right? You're staring at something you need to do. You know exactly how to do it, but you just can't start. It's like there's this huge gap between knowing and doing, and that's where all our motivation just seems to vanish. So today, we're going to talk about how to close that gap for good. And here's a hint. It's not about finding more motivation. It's about literally programming your brain for action.
It's such a familiar struggle, isn't it? That little debate you have in your head before you do anything hard. Oh, should I do it now? Maybe in an hour. Am I really up for this? What if I'm not in the mood? And that negotiation, that's where our best intentions go to die. So the real question is, why do we even do it? And more importantly, how do we make it stop?
And this quote, this gets to the heart of the problem. We've all been sold this idea that we need to feel ready or inspired or motivated before we can do something important. But as we're about to see, waiting for that magical feeling isn't the solution. It's the trap. And we're going to learn exactly how to sidestep it.
So let's talk about this motivation trap. What happens is it turns every single important task into this high-stakes emotional drama. Suddenly, your mood, how you feel in that exact moment, gets to have the final say over your goals. That big project you want to start, that workout you planned, it all gets put on hold, waiting for this perfect emotional state that, let's be honest, almost never shows up. So, here's the big shift in thinking. What if we just stopped trying to convince our emotions to get on board? What if we stopped treating our brain like this moody employee who needs a constant pep talk and started treating it like a super powerful computer that's just waiting for a clear, simple line of code to execute?
Okay, so this brings us right to the classic advice we always hear. Just set goals. But if that's all it took, why do so many of our ambitions just fizzle out? Well, it turns out there's a fatal flaw in how we've been taught to think about goals, and it has everything to do with what we were just talking about.
Just look at this number, 92%. That's the failure rate for New Year's resolutions. It's honestly staggering, and most of them are done for before February even hits. This isn't just a few people having an off week. This is a massive, systemic failure. It proves that just having a goal, no matter how badly you want it, just isn't enough.
So here's the real problem. It's not the goal itself. A goal only tells you what you want. It leaves out the most critical details, the when you're going to do it and the how you're going to start. And we leave all of that up to our mood. And let's face it, motivation is a terrible manager. It's the first to call in sick the second things get a little tough or uncomfortable.
All right, so if goals by themselves are broken, what's the fix? Well, it's a ridiculously simple but powerful system called if-then planning. And this isn't about gritting your teeth and finding more willpower. It's about designing a system that makes willpower pretty much irrelevant by programming your behavior ahead of time.
So what is it exactly? Well, if-then planning is basically a way of giving your brain a very clear, simple command. You link a specific trigger in your environment, that's the if, with an action you're going to take automatically, that's the then. It takes all the decision-making out of the moment.
And listen, this isn't just some nice-sounding theory. Look at this data from a huge study at NYU. The group that used if-then planning, they had a 91% success rate in achieving their goals. The group that just set goals the old-fashioned way, only 38%. That's not a small difference. That is a game-changing advantage. It just proves that the system works.
And this makes it crystal clear. On the left, you've got this vague goal. Work on the project. That just invites that internal debate, right? But on the right, you have a clear algorithm. If it is 9 a.m., then I will open the document and write one sentence. See? There's nothing to argue about. It's just a simple instruction.
So why is this so effective? Because it completely short-circuits what psychologists call the deliberation phase. That's just a fancy term for that moment of hesitation, the overthinking part, where all our fear and doubt come rushing in. You're basically making the decision for your future self before your emotions can get in the way and mess things up. Instead of wasting all that energy deciding if you should do it, your brain just runs the script.
Okay, so you can see how powerful this is. The next logical question is, how do you actually build one of these internal algorithms for yourself? Well, it all comes down to a really simple three-step process for creating a plan that your brain can execute, no questions asked.
So here are the steps. First, you've got to identify your if. The cue, it needs to be super specific, like a time on the clock or an event that happens. Second, you define your then, the action, and this part is crucial. Make it unbelievably small, the first tiny step. And finally, and this is the real discipline, you commit to removing the negotiation. When the cue happens, you do the action, period, no matter what.
Now, let's dig into that first step because honestly, the cue is everything. A weak cue, like when I feel motivated, is really just a built-in excuse, an escape hatch. But a strong cue is completely unambiguous. You can't argue with, it's 6 a.m. or I've just finished lunch. Your brain knows with 100% certainty when that trigger has been pulled.
All right, now for the then part, the action. The secret here is to make it so small it's almost laughable. Not run 5 miles, but put on my running shoes. Not write the whole report, but open the document. You want the action to be so tiny and non-threatening that your brain feels ridiculous even trying to resist it. The goal is just to start. Momentum will take care of the rest.
I love this analogy because it's just perfect. Think about it. Your alarm clock doesn't ask if you're tired. It doesn't check if you feel like waking up. The condition, it's 7 a.m., is met, and so the action, the alarm, happens. That is exactly how your internal algorithm should work. It's mechanical. It's non-negotiable. The trigger occurs, the action follows. Simple as that.
Now, a common reaction to all of this is that it sounds, well, a little robotic, maybe a bit rigid. I mean, where's the spontaneity? Where's the joy in that? And this brings us to this really beautiful paradox about how our minds actually thrive.
People hear this and they immediately push back. They think this kind of structure is going to kill their freedom and creativity. But what all the research, and honestly the experience of so many creative people shows us is that the exact opposite is true. And here's the big secret. Structure actually creates freedom. When you put the important, difficult things on autopilot, you free up a huge amount of mental energy. You stop wasting your day fighting with yourself and feeling guilty. And all that energy you save, you can pour that into being creative, being spontaneous, and being present for the rest of your life.
Look, making this work requires a pretty fundamental mindset shift. You have to start seeing that feeling of resistance not as a stop sign, but just as a feeling. Your feelings, they're just data. They are not your boss. And most importantly, you have to start trusting that inspiration isn't something you wait around for, it's something that finds you once you've already started the work.
And this is so empowering. At the end of the day, you are in control. Those feelings of doubt, of procrastination, that's just old code running on autopilot. You have the power to write a new program, to install a new algorithm that serves your goals instead of your fears. You are the programmer. So if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for motivation to strike. That is not the goal. The goal is simply to run the code you wrote for yourself. If the condition is met, then the action happens. It's really that simple. So what's the first algorithm you're going to write?